Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger. So this week we are talking about COVID again, but of course, always relevant. I know that I've been taking up a lot of my time this week and over the last couple of weeks, and still been getting a lot of questions about vaccination and masks, and just a lot of questions around should we be instituting masks again in our workplace. What can we have different policies for different, employees that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And I know that we've been working through a lot of that with clients. And what have you been telling them about masks, Russell?
Yeah, well, with respect to masks, the CDC guidance currently is that if you're in an area of high transmission or substantial transmission, that everyone, regardless of vaccination status, should be wearing a mask inside. So if your policy as an employer were to simply follow CDC guidance, that's what you do. You can find the map on the CDC website of high and substantial transmission. It's most of the country, so most places are going to fall within that. So if you wanted to just adhere to CDC, which has some logic to it, that would be one way to go about doing it. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of folks do is adhere to local mask mandates. So whether it's state or locality, whatever mandates they put are law. So you've got to comply with them. You don't have any discretion like you would with the CDC. So we're seeing a lot of that. And if you're in a jurisdiction where you don't have a mandate, one of the other questions we're getting is whether you can treat vaccinated and unvaccinated people differently. And I think you can. I mean, there's some very nuanced legal issues in that, and it's always makes sense to run that by an attorney. But as Sarah and I were saying before we started recording, that might just be me going down the legal rabbit hole and spinning myself around. At a high level, being unvaccinated is not a protected class. And if you say, vaccinated people need to be masked, unvaccinated people need to be masked and vaccinated people don't, I think that's a generally enforceable policy.
Yeah, and following the guidance is always gives you some coverage there. If that's what you're doing, and just trying to be compliant and trying to keep your workforce safe. I think there's a good argument to be made there. I'm also seeing a lot of questions around just events and clients coming into the office and things like that, and trying to keep people safe. So I think that's something to consider. All of these types of policies and whether you want to follow the guidance, because you can. Even if there's not a mandate in your area, you as a business can mandate masks at your events, at your office, requiring clients wear them. So that is, it's up to you as a business, and you've got to make some of these business decisions, unless there's a mandate, of course. But, so I'm seeing a lot of policies developing too around events, especially if people are still starting to have them in person, despite the increase in cases, and starting to develop some policies around vaccination for attendees and clients and verifying that information. So something to consider as well is just beyond even just your employees. Well, what are you doing with all of these other people that may interact with your business in some way, throughout this time this COVID time that we're still in. So.
Well, in addition to masking, one of the other things we're starting to see more questions on, or seeing a rise in questions on, is testing, and how does testing fit into the protective regimen as businesses are opening more and more. And I'll just say, kind of at the onset, I'm not the biggest fan of testing. I mean, I think testing has a role. It's a tool. It's worthwhile, but I don't think relying on testing. You might have to in some exceptions and accommodations, but it's not that great because you're not getting people tested every day. The test takes some amount of time to get a result, for the most part. And then if you're requiring testing every 3 days or every week or what have you, there's a lot of time in between after the test where the person's going to be in the office. So the test is a measure of where someone is at a snapshot in time. It's not an ongoing protective thing like a mask or certainly like a vaccine. So I would put it, rank it third in that hierarchy of useful tools for employers or for businesses. But that being said, I think for the most part, when it is being done, I think employers are encouraging folks to, go to public testing centers where, there's no cost associated with it. And, it's and requiring that, I haven't really seen a consensus around either length of time, whether it should be once a week, whether it should be 3 days, 48 hours, day of. We've seen that with airlines and different things where there's just different timing around it. So I guess I would say generally, testings can be useful, but vaccination and masking would probably be my top two options.
Yeah, and I would say it's also because there is a huge administrative burden, and I would, just add to that too that some employers, I do believe, are using the testing as a motivating factor as well for not, people who don't meet exemptions, and saying, well, if you're going to have to get tested, I mean, that's I think kind of the idea behind some of the like government. I think in New York they did a testing option as part of their mandate, and I think that the burden of having to get tested frequently for people who don't meet exceptions. Exemptions that might get them to actually end up getting vaccinated and could be a motivating factor because it's a pain in the butt. So as you noted, for all the reasons that you said. So, but that's great. That's great. And I'm sure we'll be continuing to have this conversation, Russell, but I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.